very good, thank you, Elisa. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm very excited to expand ourselves into the Dutch market today. We have a very special guest.
We've never been to the Netherlands.
We haven't. Well,
You
I have
should.
in
Well, I
person,
mean, I've
but
been in physically, I've been, but not as a podcast. We've never
I
been.
know we're breaking new ground, and I think with the most appropriate guest talking about the most appropriate topics. So it's perfect. So don't screw it up, is what I'm saying. Okay.
I'll try my best. I'll try my best. You know me.
You and I have talked about RFPs. In some ways, they're the bane of our existence. In some ways, they are the doorway to work. And we stumbled upon a white paper recently, a Conferli research product, and it talked about the future of our RFPs, and we were both really drawn to it. It focused almost exclusively on event management and RFPs for venues and destinations and things like that. But I found it fascinating in the context of what could and should RFPs be. So we brought to the association transformation table one of the co-authors, and excited to have Bregje Frens with us today, association director for Conferli. Thank you so much for being with us. I know you want to translate that into Dutch for us, so I didn't want to destroy the name, so I'll defer to you.
Yeah, so it's Bregje in Dutch, which is a very typical Dutch name. But thank you for having me here today.
Of course, of course. So what spawned this research for Conferli?
So basically, what we do with Conferli is we are a platform and we help associations to make a more strategic decision on where they go for their next annual conference or any type of conference, basically. We think that if they choose the right destination, depending on the topic of the conference, which matches with the ecosystem or intellectual capital, I think you guys would call it in the US. If you match that to each other, then it could bring great value and create more impactful conferences in the future. So basically, that's what Conferli does. So we help associations to benchmark cities to each other, to do research on factual information about destinations, and based on that information, make a decision on where they should go. We offer them RFP support for free. This entire platform is for free for associations.
Whoa.
But besides that, we do research, and we do research into topics that are relevant for associations. That research helps us to become more relevant with the platform, and it gives us knowledge and insights on how associations operate and work. So that's kind of the background of like
that's
what amazing.
We do. Yeah. I mean, I think I stopped listening after the word free. I mean, that's amazing. It's a great service to the sector.
Yeah,
it is.
100%.
And I got a great kind of insight into the choices that organizations make. There was a lot of questions in the white paper about what you're looking for as you consider a city, what you think makes up an event experience. So it was a nice balance between this discussion of RFPs, but RFPs were pretty much identified as old-fashioned and slow. And I think that's what, that's the premise of this whole research, right? Is that RFPs aren't getting people what they need.
Well, so two years ago, right after the pandemic, we did a research on what does a tender process or an RFP process of an association really looks like. And we thought now it's 2 years after the pandemic, and we should do like an update on, what's the status right now, and looking at the future and all of the elements that are changing in our industry, topics like sustainability, impact, legacy, DEI, how are they incorporated in order for our industry to be ready for the future? And this year we talk about how associations should be ready for the future in the conference business. So we thought this topic, how to prepare the RFP of the future, could really fit into that overall topic. And it was a really interesting research to do, to be really honest. The outcomes are complicated and gives us a lot of topic to talk about, I would say.
Alex, Andrew, what did you take away from your first look at this research?
Well, I mean, honestly, I was quite surprised that this is going to sound brutal, not being an event specialist and not having adequate knowledge of how conference venues are sourced. I was quite surprised that it was as sophisticated as it is. And And I
Well,
don't,
wait a minute.
I don't, you know, I
How
don't.
can you say that? How can you say that when 45% of the respondents said they don't even have an RFP process?
No, I get. Well, no, yeah, they don't have it. Yeah, but 55% do. So that's
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
yeah, 55% do. And I think that did surprise me and certainly Bridget, the way what you did, the way you describe the services that you provide associations, it sounds from my own personal experience far more sophisticated than I think I've ever done it, which is been very much on the lines of, well, we went north last year, we should go south this year, and
But
Right,
that
or
is
our incoming
exactly,
president, yeah.
yeah,
Our incoming
but
president
that
and his
is
wife want to
exactly the
go
point.
here. Yeah.
I know, but that is exactly the point. If we're looking at the future and all the challenges that are ahead of us, thinking about how to travel, how to attract the younger generation in order to get as much delegates to your event as you want, in order to stay financially healthy, then you need to be more strategic about it. Instead of associations seeing it as, we're just copy pasting this event that we did last year, we should become more, or I'm not an association, so they should become more as a corporate organization and think about it in a way how to commercialize your event and to become a business and think about it in a strategic way. And it's going to help you to drive your event forward, I would say. But that all starts with the RFP, because that's where the process starts.
Yeah.
So you're clearly an advocate for RFPs. And I know of those 55% that said they use RFPs, half of those said that they felt the process was insufficient. But we're not saying throw the RFP process out or ignore it or cancel it. We're talking about an evolution of a process that we believe does help ensure strategic outcomes, strategic event choices.
Yeah. And it should make all of our lives easier in the end. At this point, if we're looking at the research, people find it time consuming, they find it complicated, they find it super hard to compare proposals to each other. How can you make a good decision if every proposal looks different? How can you do that? So we're trying to figure out how can we make it easier for both the association as well as the venue. I mean, it's going to save everybody time and money.
Although arguably, equally, it's equally difficult to assess when every proposal looks the same. Surely.
Why?
Well, if you're getting the
So
same,
you can compare.
well, I mean, but compare what? What are you comparing?
But as a vendor, I would just copy and paste in the same stuff for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if you're looking at the way that associations are looking at specific information, they want to get information. And that's never in the proposal at this stage. So they all need specific information about funding opportunities, about specific speaker opportunities, specific way that the venue needs to be designed or needs to be set up. And at this stage, what they're experiencing is that the venues or the hotels, that they just copy paste the proposal from every other event.
Right.
And that doesn't really meet their requirements. And if somebody includes VAT and the other country doesn't include VAT, then how do you know which one is the best deal?
Yeah.
So this is super complicated to prepare or to compare. Sorry.
I understand. Lisa, you're on mute.
Sorry, penalty. I know. I apologize. So this is where I struggle.
$10 in the beer jar.
$10. All right, $10 to Andrew's beer fund because I spoke on mute. I get it. Here's where I struggled with, the difference between a good RFP and someone providing detail and answering the questions completely versus just not giving the association the answers that they want. A hotel can fill in an RFP with great clarity, great detail, answer everything, make it customized.
Yeah, but they don't.
And it still be the answers that an association doesn't want. You have to have a room block. We're not going to forgive certain cancellation, all the things that people want forgiveness on and we want flexibility on. That's very different than the success of an RFP.
Yeah, and I think the problem starts with the communication. The problem starts with the expectation. So associations have a totally different way of working than corporates, for example, or than agencies that are organizing events for corporates. They have a longer decision time. Their processes take way longer than any others. They cannot guarantee room blocks, for example, but that's all what venues are looking for. So in the beginning, it starts in the beginning. If associations are not making clear what they're looking for from a venue, then how can they answer the questions correctly? So
there's
it's a
mutual
two-way
blame.
communication.
There's mutual blame for
Definitely.
why this doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's also not understanding each other's main goals.
Yeah.
Currently, I'm working on an RFP where it's constantly the communication between me and the venue saying the association needs more time because they are working with a board of directors that are volunteers for this association. So they only come together once a month. So I don't know if you give me an option period of 2 weeks, I'm not going to have an answer for you. So it starts with the beginning. And if we don't have that communication clear in the RFP from the beginning, then it will cause frustration at the venue side and it will never be a good event. That was one of the big topics that came out as well.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say. So, I mean, effectively, what we're saying is, and I think, you know, obviously, Elisa and I don't respond to RFPs for events and conferences. Needless, we don't do that. However, I am recognizing, and I think this is one of the things that when I read the market, when I read your study, I thought, yeah, actually, and what you're describing there is two. You've got you've got a supplier and a buyer who are basically talking maybe the same language but different dialects.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're just bumping into one another, and I see that a lot when we do a lot. I mean, we put a lot in together, but we also do things separately. And when the number of times you look at something and you think, I don't really understand what they're looking for. I don't understand what they want, and so I can totally empathize with the venue providers, the hotel chains, what have you, cutting and pasting, because if you think if all else fails, I'll just give them what I think they want. And
and it's also, if you're looking at all of the tools that are out there at this point, they're all made for the main public, for the main event organizer, the general event organizer. But if you're looking at the association market, association conferences are 1% of the entire MICE market, meetings, incentives, conferences, and events.
Yeah.
So if you need to tailor a tool specifically for associations that have very different criteria and very different decision processes, then that's really complicated. So the tools that are out there are just not made for associations. So hotels are used to working with those tools. So they do that all day long, continuously. And then you get that one RFP from an association and you think, what are we talking about? I don't know. What am I? Yeah. Copy paste. There you go.
And I think also as buyers, I think sometimes associations don't necessarily know how to structure their RFP.
No, they're not event planners.
Oh, and then you end up seeing, and I think you've seen this as well, Lise. You end up seeing something and you think, well, you've obviously just cut and pasted this from a template on the internet. You've done a Google for, RFP, and you look at, I mean, I've had all sorts of things. I've had to go back to potential clients and say, you're asking me to submit information through this portal, but there is no portal. What you've obviously
it's been out of this research, that was one of the biggest frustrations. It was a copy paste mentality instead of a personalized approach. They're not looking for a transactional relationship, but they're looking for a partnership. They're looking for understanding. They're looking for time consuming and fast. And all of these things that I just mentioned, are really hard to do that time consuming because that takes time. So, I mean, it's also a complicated market. I mean, we have to be fair about that. So that's been one of the interesting things.
A partnership is going to be difficult when you're only 1% of the business, and expecting that type of sympathetic engagement and time and personalization. I think it really then obligates the association to clearly define the experience they're looking for and make it easy for the venues.
Yeah, and if you then, as an association, can explain that the reason why you're going to that specific city is because it will strengthen the content of your conference, because the ecosystem in that specific city totally aligns with your conference material and your content, then maybe the venue will understand, I have a bigger chance of winning this piece of business. So let me put all the hard work in, because it really aligns with our city. So I'm going to have a higher percentage of making this business. And that's also the whole communication part. If you show why you select this specific venue for this specific conference, then maybe they will work harder and take more time, because their chance of winning the bid is higher.
Do you think? Oh, sorry, Elise, go on. I can see you were going to ask a question. Go on.
I was just going to ask, have the tides turned post-COVID? I imagine there was a time where the venues needed associations to come back, to bring people, to get things back to normal. Are we now at a point where travel and all the MICE opportunities have returned, and now it's really the associations that need the venues more? You know, has the
Yes,
power
that
balance
is
turned back?
definitely changed. I mean, the occupancy in hotels is super high. They are getting requests in, I mean, as many as they can handle, or even more on a daily basis. So that is definitely a big part of the problem. If we take away the association business, they will still have enough corporate business to fill their properties with. And it's also a difficult challenge if you need to show your general manager that, you know, you've got a first option in for an association that can decide maybe in 2 months' time, and you've got a second option that can decide next week. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So there needs to be a more clear understanding on how the association market works and why is it relevant for venues. Then there needs to be an understanding from associations. How do venues work?
So how don't they know how each other work? I mean, I appreciate it's 1% of the MICE sector. I totally get that. But you know, I mean, I am always, when I exhibit, for example, at conferences, I'm always dwarfed by the Marriotts and the Hiltons and the, you know, Visit Bruges or Visit Toronto, or, you know, the bureaus. How come? I mean, they're always there. And
Yeah.
how come they don't know each other then? Because it strikes me that one of the things I grapple with is, you know, in the industry, in the membership world, you know, Elisa and I are very much focused on non-event activity, but all I see, the two kind of dominant sellers in the marketplace are software, CRM providers, software providers,
Yeah.
and event venues. And it really surprised me. Do you know what? As I'm saying this, as I'm asking you this, I'm thinking, I think the same issue does actually apply to the software providers and the associations as well, which is why often you have there's a disconnect between what people think they're buying and what is then actually delivered.
Yeah.
Well, what I think is a really important topic here is convention bureaus or DMOs are focused on associations. They have a team that's doing the research, that's understanding how their tender or bidding processes work. They are educated within this topic. So, and they are all fighting for the larger conferences, you know, the ones that are covering the citywide events. But then there is, if you're looking at the European association market, 62% of the conferences that are taking place in Europe are below 400 delegates.
Wow.
Convention bureaus mostly focus on the citywides. So that's like only a very small piece of that association market. So for all of those smaller associations that have their event up to 400 that could fit into one hotel, they talk to the banquet sales or the events department in that one specific hotel. They don't talk to the regional director of sales for Marriott because they are small. Nobody focuses on them. They'd speak to the events department in the hotel itself. And that is a different level of, not a different level, but they have another focus on a daily basis. If they would go through the convention bureau, it could really help them a lot. But for these smaller events, most of the time they don't.
Yeah, that's what I came to appreciate, is how many association events don't even get bid on, either because of size, expectation, delays, or budget, or special requests.
But that is exactly why we built Conferli, exactly for that smaller group of associations, or that big group of associations with smaller events, because nobody's, you know, contacting them, nobody's reaching out to them, nobody's helping them in their processes, but they, most of the time, as we just discussed before, have maybe 5 people working for them, and they all wear their communication hat, their PR hat, their finances, and they're also doing, I don't know, law. and then the event.
And often they're the associations who rely more heavily than most on their annual conference income, sustaining them through the other 11 months of the year. So yeah, that's dynamic.
So where does
one
this
of the
start?
Where does it
you know, something you brought up was that this needs to start with associations who are willing to make event and venue decisions based on what it brings to the content, how it advances their mission, and based on strategic factors, not where the chairman wants to go, what part of town you haven't been to lately, where it might be a vacation, you know, spot for the long tenured members. How do you get that mindset to change? I mean, we see half of the people aren't even using RFPs, and I would argue
I think that's a very long process. But that's really what we've been trying to do for the last couple of years with Conferli, to show this. That's why we do the research, to show people how can you do it, to talk about it. I have a podcast that talks about destination selection, you know, how a destination can advance your event, to educate people on the importance of why a destination can bring more content to your event. It's all about education, and it might take a little while. And if you're looking at what associations are looking for, that came out of this tool, is a dream scenario, which is at this situation, basically impossible. But it's something that we need to, you know, talk to each other about, and put these people together and create a group out of association professionals that are working within smaller associations, larger associations, and see how we can help each other, maybe technical people that understand how tools work, and put them together and see how can we help you guys the best.
Yeah, and there was one piece of low-hanging fruit that really resonated with me as someone who responds to RFPs, and that was the idea and request for a two-stage process. You know, whether you are just doing an initial, you know, request for information. Hey, what's your price range? What do you require? What's your time frame? I mean, I would love if I got to have an introductory info call with every prospect before I spent 5 hours on an RFP. I wish I knew what their minimum requirements were. So before I put all that effort in, and to make sure I'm the right fit for them. I think that could be one of the first things that every association, irrespective of the type of work they're putting out for tender, that that they do a first step, they do a first check.
I think that is the best idea also that came out of the associations that we spoke to. I had an interview with one of the associations that's actually doing this already. And I said, you know, you should be the example for everybody. You should be talking to the whole world about this, because that is exactly how it's going to be, you know, it's going to add value for venues as well. They understand why they're here and they can talk to each other.
There's also, I think, the inconsistency of approach amongst buyers is one of the reasons that I often opt out of an RFP process, because I've been given all sorts of advice, you know, oh, you should, you know, we welcome people. You know, when I've asked for feedback, if I've not got a gig, and they've said, oh, well, the people who got it, they reached out and they had a conversation, and I'm thinking, all right, okay. And then I've reached out to a potential buyer and they've said to me, oh, no, I don't want to talk to you. We want a level playing field for everybody. And I'm like, oh, you can't win. The inconsistency in it is like, well, you know, and I appreciate that people have different requirements, different expectations. But I think, you know, and that's fair enough. But I think if there is an industry standard in how we approach, and I would extend this beyond the event environment. I would say if there's an industry standard in terms of how associations apply the principles of RFPs, that would be from a seller's perspective. I think that would be tremendously well received.
It's the RFP golden rule. If you want a partnership in your RFP process, treat your potential vendor as a potential partner.
But I think within association, it all starts with, you know, we talk in our research about having either a centralized tender process or I'm sorry, now I lost the name of it, a traditional RFP process or tender process. There's a difference. So the traditional one is where they open up their conference to bid on. So destinations can bid on it and they can win it. And the other one, the centralized, is where the association itself takes control and
Yeah.
they decide on the destination, and then they gather a group of local hosts
They
to,
ask people
shape.
to submit.
Yeah,
They invite people to submit.
No, at the centralized, they don't invite people. They
Oh.
select the destination themselves. When they've selected it, they then gather their local members to
Okay.
give, content to the event.
Okay.
At the traditional tender process, they ask people to bid.
Yeah.
If every association would move away from asking destinations to bid, then we can be way more transparent. Then we can make choices based on our strategic goals. The association makes the decision, and then you involve your local members.
Yeah.
And that would be, according to me, but who am I? The best way to be more strategic about your event planning. Don't let local members decide, or destinations that have biggest pockets, to bid for your event. It's not transparent. It's not fair.
And I think it points to, a need to get those quick wins. If we just cast our net far and wide, we'll get something. And because we simply don't have the time or the resource to invest in, a partnership, invest in a relationship, etc., etc. And so the quick win, yes, you've got that quick win, but it's always negated in terms of quality, in terms of the return on investment. You never ever get that, I suppose, the old adage, you get what you get back what you put in is so true. And I think that's the case across the RFP tendering process completely.
Yeah. But I also think, sorry.
No, go for it, Bregje.
No, but if you're looking at the future and how our world is changing and developing, and if you're looking at associations that depend on members, these future members are 25 years old right now. They have different motivations on either becoming a member, first of all, of an association, and second of all, when they travel and how they travel. If you don't tap into that and try to understand them, that generation, in 10 years' time, you're going to have a big problem with your association. So thinking about the long term, you should also decide, keep that in mind as well.
And it was interesting, the group that you got responses from, the survey, the research body, it was actually a pretty low to moderate priority. The sustainability, the legacy, the SDGs were rated fairly moderate, if not low, for a majority of those who said they did have RFP process. So that it's a self-acknowledgement that they're not really embracing what you're saying yet, or don't know how to convert that into part of their process or part of their selection criteria.
Well, I also think
it's also because it makes it's difficult. Where do you start?
It is difficult. It is difficult, absolutely. But I also think, Elisa, I think it also points to generational shifts in terms of values. I think what we're seeing there is people who are currently running, the event programs are not 25 years old. They're not necessarily got the same sort of outlook that we are seeing across a lot of different areas in terms of generational perspectives on what we value. Goodness, ISO 2012-1, which is the international standard for sustainable events. They launched that in advance of the London Olympics in 2012. And, here we are 12 years later, and I suggest the Paris Olympics is probably not going to be any more sustainable than London was. So, but I think that reflects who the current decision makers are and who are leading these processes. So I think the more that we can do as a sector to sort of influence change at that level it will have huge impacts.
Yeah, I really think that's going to be the future. Yeah.
So what's Conferli doing next? Is there a plan to build a library of good RFPs so people can see what others are doing? Are you guys building a template that is industry standard? What's next?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ideas. One of the first ideas is that we want to gather a group of specialists within our industry from all different kinds of specialisms. One, people working within an association, people working within the event industry, but also maybe somebody from outside of the industry that has a good idea. We want to come up with a plan. We want to see if we can use that plan to get funding in and to start building something that is relevant for associations. If you're looking at the report, everybody's looking for like a flexible approach with like building blocks that they can, build into like an RFP that they can use for every type of event.
Yeah, the dream scenario.
Okay, that all sounds great.
Scenario.
It's a dream scenario, but we need to figure out, and I don't have the expertise on that. So right now we're looking for a group of experts that says, let's take on this challenge and come up with a design, come up with an idea. Yeah. It might take a little while, which is okay. And in the meantime, we're here to give RFP support. If you have no idea what you're doing, then let us do the work for them. We can easily do that and help you out in the meantime until there is such a tool out there.
Well, I shall be reaching out to you and asking you to fill in all my RFPs.
I can do that for sure. Not a problem at all. I'm here to help out.
Well, and we
make it easier.
Those interested, those within the association transformation community and audience, if you're interested in being one of those experts, if you're interested in learning more, we'll put the white paper research link in the show notes. Contact Conferli, find out what's going on. I mean, we're not going to make this better. We're not going to help the translation of these multiple languages if we all don't contribute, if we all don't listen, learn, and actually adopt some changes that may be less easy, maybe different, maybe scary. So I really appreciate what Conferli is doing in this space. I love this research. It forced me to ask a lot of questions about how I approach RFPs and also better understanding of how the associations what thought they're really giving to the requests that they're putting out. So I really appreciate that. And I hope you'll come back. It sounds like you guys do lots of different research every few years. Yeah. And, if you're going to a cool place, let us know. We can be there.
Oh,
awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
We can podcast live for you anywhere in the world.
Absolutely. Well, we should be on their podcast. I mean, Conferli has a podcast.
I never thought
and
of
look,
that.
She has the fancy microphone. Like, she's legitimate.
We have fancy.
You can also find our podcast on Spotify as well. So
awesome.
Listen,
well,
I would say.
Thank you, Andrew. I thought you were going to say
something. Thank you for having us. No, I wasn't. I'm done.
I'm done.
Right, she's out. She mic dropped. Say
whatever. My fancy microphone. All right.
Dutch mic drop. I'm out.
That's it.
Until next time, put your members and your mission first.